So one of the challenges with assessing global status of omega-3 is diet is often used, but there's some challenges between what we eat and what actually ends up in our blood and what is our true tissue status. So we tried to take a blood-based approach and measure blood levels. The biggest problem, though, when you get into the omega-3 blood level research is there's no consistent method. So people are using different methods across the globe. And the challenge was we had, 30% of the data was coming from red blood cells, 30% of the data was coming from plasma phospholipid analysis, and then we had about 30% coming from plasma total lipid extracts. And then recently, people have started using whole blood because of a dried blood spot application that's started to appear as well, because it's very convenient to take samples. So basically you have like 4 types of blood levels being used, and how do we kind of compare them so we can actually compare a map. So we kind of had to figure out a way to translate them into one type of equivalence. We chose a red blood cell equivalent so we could transfer these values into the same value, so then we could map. And then just getting all the data from the literature was a challenge, just searching.
So how many individual studies did you put together for this?
So the first screening we ended up with 877, and then we added, I think it was 41 extra ones, and then we went into actually the papers and started sorting them out. And we ended up with a total of 298 actual papers, but within those papers we had what we call 398 data lines, because you would have a paper that compared 2 countries, so that would count as 2. So we ended up with about 100 extra data lines. And then after the translation, we lost about, I think it was 26 data lines we couldn't include because we just couldn't make that, there wasn't enough data. So one of the another challenge is how people report the data in the papers, and maybe something moving forward that we can is try to set some standards saying, when you're reporting your fatty acid data, please report this amount of data so people can use it the way we've done to make it easier in the future.
So I think I'm right in saying this is the biggest human-aided study of its kind done to date.
Yeah, like some people have done some dietary intake maps, but this is the largest kind of coalition of all this data for human blood.
In terms of, now you've done the global map, were there areas of the globe which were particularly low? I think in the Omega-3 index, so sort of less than 4.
Most of the globe tended to be low. You had regions in the northern part of the continents tended to be like Scandinavia tended to have higher, northern Canada had higher, some of the populations in northern Russia, and then the other areas with the Pacific core, the Southwest Pacific's islands would have higher omega-3s, but a lot of the other places had low levels. Although you did see some, usually countries on the coast where obviously fishing is more available, they would have higher levels of omega-3, where landlocked countries would be very low.
And in terms of developing countries, would you get any data on that?
That's where there's a lot of missing data. Like for Africa, there's some intake estimates, but we couldn't find a lot of healthy adult blood levels. And that was another challenge we found, is we wanted healthy adults as a reference value, just like what are healthy adults levels, and not kids or sick populations. And within research, we saw maybe some evidence of a bias for grant funding towards just kind of reference characterization data, where people don't want to fund that type of work, but it seems to be critical for how do we decide what is the best level, or the level that the globe has. So we need some work in South America. We had very low value, like a lot of missing countries, and missing countries in Africa were really the 2 biggest kind of regions. And then there was a lot of islands in, say, Southeast Asia, we were missing data as well.
Because I think people will be interested in seeing whether we can improve our intake on a global basis and individual countries. So when would be right to perhaps do another similar sweep of
data? I think it would be neat if I kind of suggested in my talk that maybe we should be looking at some kind of international working group or consortium to kind of maybe track this. Could we get an international blood biobank where samples from different countries, and maybe try to get countries that we have no data on, and at least start to get some numbers, and can we actually track them over the next few years would be very interesting.
Well, thank you very much indeed for explaining that to us, Professor Stark. We found that very useful.
Well, thank you.